What's the word, YouTube? It's your boy Doughboy. If you like this content, hit subscribe and enjoy the ride. On February 9th, 2024, I filmed a funeral service using my iPhone that will be watched by 2.3 million people. My name is Terrell Kennedy, and I'm a videographer who documents homegoing services for families in our community. When I walked into Miracle Revival Cathedral in Maywood that morning, I had no idea I was about to capture something that would touch hearts around the world. The church was completely packed. Every pew was filled. People were standing along the walls, sitting in folding chairs that had been brought in at the last minute, and gathering outside because there simply wasn't enough room for everyone who wanted to be there. But the story you're about to hear, the story that brought all these people together, didn't start in this church. It didn't start with flowers and tears and a community saying goodbye. The story started 8 days earlier, on what seemed like just another ordinary Wednesday morning in Chicago. January 31st, 2024. A morning that began with something as simple and beautiful as a big brother helping his little brother get ready for school. "16-year-old Daveon Gibson woke up early that morning, just like he did every day, to help his little brother Tremaine get ready for school. But this wasn't just any day at Swift Elementary School. It was picture day, and Daveon, being the caring big brother that he was, wanted to make sure Tremaine looked absolutely perfect. He helped him pick out the right clothes, made sure his hair was combed just right, probably gave him some encouraging words about smiling for the camera, and sent him off to school with the kind of love and attention that only a big brother can give. It was the last act of love from a teenager who had dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Daveon didn't just love his family, he loved taking care of things. Animals, people, anyone who needed help. His family would later tell reporters that this was just who Daveon was, always looking out for others, always making sure his two younger brothers had everything they needed, always putting his family first, even when it meant getting up earlier or staying up later, or doing whatever it took to make sure everyone was okay. Later that day, Daveon left Senn High School at 3:06 p.m., just like he did every other school day. He was walking the same route he'd walked hundreds of times before, down West Thorndale Avenue toward home, where his family was expecting him by 3:30, just like always. It was a route that should have been safe. It was a route that should have taken him 15 minutes. It was a route that thousands of Chicago students take every single day without incident, trusting that they'll make it home to their families. But at exactly 3:36 p.m., multiple gunshots shattered the quiet of that residential street. In just 30 minutes from the time Daveon left school to the time those shots were fired, 3 young lives would be forever changed. A family would be destroyed, and a community would be left asking how something like this could happen, just steps away from where their children go to school. What happened in those 30 minutes will become a story of heartbreak and hope, of violence and community, of loss and love. It's the story of Daveon Gibson, from the loving brother who just wanted to help his family, to the investigation that brought justice, to the legacy that 2.3 million people around the world came to honor. This is the story of a life that mattered, and a community that refused to let that life be forgotten. Before I tell you about what happened on January 31st, I need you to understand who Daveon Gibson really was. Because Daveon wasn't just another teenager walking home from school that day. He wasn't just a statistic or a headline or a name in a news report. He was so much more than what happened to him, and his family wants the world to know that. Daveon Daquan Gibson was the kind of 16-year-old that parents hoped their children would become. He was responsible, caring, focused on his education and his future. But more than that, he was joyous. That's the word his family uses when they talk about him, joyous. He had this energy about him, this way of making people feel better just by being around. When he walked into a room, people smiled. When he was part of a conversation, people laughed. When his family needed something, Daveon was there. His grandmother, Sherry Wesley, would later tell reporters something that perfectly captures who Daveon was as a person. She said he loved music and dancing, and that he got good grades and went to school every day. But it was more than that. She said he was known for his kindness and respectful attitude with all. This wasn't a teenager who was getting into trouble or running with the wrong crowd or making the kinds of choices that worried his family. This was a young man who was doing everything right. Daveon was a sophomore at Senn High School in Chicago's Edgewater neighborhood, and his teachers knew him as exactly the kind of student they love having in their classrooms. Respectful, engaged, focused on learning. He wasn't just showing up to get through the day. He was there because he had plans for his future, big plans. Daveon wanted to be a veterinarian, and anyone who knew him understood why. He genuinely loved taking care of things, animals, people, his family. But if you really want to understand who Daveon was, you need to understand his relationship with his two younger brothers. Daveon took his role as big brother seriously in a way that would make any parent proud. Every single morning he would wake up early to help them get ready for school. Every single morning he would make sure they had everything they needed. Every single morning he would send them off with confidence and love and the security that comes from knowing your big brother has your back. His brothers attended Swift Elementary School, and Daveon knew their schedules, their teachers, their friends, their worries. He was the kind of big brother who remembered when it was picture day, who made sure homework was done, who was always available when they needed help with something. The morning of January 31st was no different. When picture day arrived for his little brother Tremaine, Daveon was right there, making sure everything was perfect. He helped Tremaine pick out clothes that would look good in the pictures. He made sure his hair was combed just right. He probably gave him some encouraging words about smiling for the camera and not being nervous. And then he sent him off to school with the kind of love and attention that creates the foundation for a happy childhood. It was the kind of ordinary morning that becomes extraordinary only when you realize it was the last time everything was normal. But this Wednesday would be different. This Wednesday, Daveon Gibson would never make it home to ask his little brother about picture day. This Wednesday, a family's world would be shattered, and the community would lose one of its brightest lights. Wednesday, January 31st, 2024, started like any other day in Chicago's Edgewater neighborhood. The sun came up, families got ready for work and school, and life moved forward in that comfortable rhythm that happens when everything feels normal and safe. Students arrived at Senn High School for another day of classes. Teachers prepared their lessons, and parents sent their children off with the expectation that they would see them again at dinner time. Edgewater is the kind of neighborhood where families choose to live specifically because they want their children to have good schools and safe streets. It's on Chicago's north side, filled with tree-lined blocks and well-maintained homes, and the kind of community feel that makes parents comfortable letting their teenagers walk to and from school. It's not the kind of place where you expect to hear gunshots in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. Senn High School sits right in the heart of this community, serving families who believe in education and safety and the promise that their children can build good lives if they work hard and make smart choices. For years, students have been walking to and from this school without incident, taking the same routes through the same neighborhoods, trusting that they were safe in their own community. At 3:06 p.m., just like every other school day, the final bell rang at Senn High School. Students poured out of the building, heading in all directions toward their homes, their after-school jobs, their evening plans. Some got picked up by parents, some took public transportation, and some, like Daveon Gibson, simply walked. It was a beautiful January day, and the 15-minute walk home was something Daveon had done so many times that he probably didn't even think about it anymore. Daveon gathered his things, said goodbye to his friends, and walked out of Senn High School for what would be the last time. He turned toward West Thorndale Avenue, taking the route he'd taken hundreds of times before. It was a route that took him through residential streets, past homes where families lived and children played. It was a route that should have been completely safe. It was a route that his family trusted, that his community trusted, that thousands of Chicago students take every single day without any reason to worry. But while Daveon was walking home, thinking about his little brother's picture day and whatever plans his family had for that evening, something else was happening. Someone was making a decision that would change everything. At some point during those 30 minutes between 3:06 and 3:36, two teenagers made the choice to steal a car, loaded with weapons, and drive to West Thorndale Avenue with the intention of committing violence. At exactly 3:36 p.m., and police know this precise time because surveillance cameras captured everything that happened, a gray Honda Accord with Florida license plates pulled up to the 1200 block of West Thorndale Avenue. This wasn't a car that belonged in the neighborhood. This wasn't someone making an innocent stop or visiting a friend. This was a stolen vehicle, and the people inside had come there with guns and with a plan to use them. Inside that Honda were two teenagers who had made choices that would destroy multiple lives in a matter of seconds. A 14-year-old whose name hasn't been released because of his age, and 17-year-old Kashawn Purdue. They weren't there by accident. They weren't there for any innocent reason. They had driven through Chicago with weapons, looking for their targets, and they had found them on West Thorndale Avenue. Daveon Gibson was struck in the chest, but the violence didn't stop with Daveon. Two of his friends, two other teenagers who were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, were also shot in the attack. A 16-year-old was hit in the jaw, chest, and left arm, leaving him fighting for his life. A 15-year-old was shot in the leg. 3 teenagers, walking home from school, became victims of a violence that no one should ever have to experience. The shooters jumped back into that stolen Honda and sped away from the scene, leaving 3 young people bleeding on West Thorndale Avenue. They left behind chaos and terror and the kind of trauma that changes a community forever. They left behind families who would never be the same, friends who would never feel completely safe again, and a neighborhood that would have to find a way to heal from something that should never have happened. Emergency services arrived at 3:40 p.m., just 4 minutes after the shooting. 4 minutes. That's all it took for 3 young lives to be forever changed and for a community to lose its sense of security. Paramedics worked frantically to save all 3 victims, rushing them to nearby hospitals with injuries that no teenager should ever have to endure. Daveon was rushed to the hospital, but the damage from the gunshot to his chest was too severe. The boy who had helped his brother get ready for school pictures that morning, the teenager who dreamed of becoming a veterinarian and taking care of animals, the big brother who woke up early every day to make sure his siblings had everything they needed, was pronounced dead. At 3:30 p.m., Daveon should have been walking through his front door, ready to ask Tremaine about how picture day went and to help his family with whatever they needed that evening. Instead, his family received a phone call that no parent, no grandparent, no sibling should ever have to receive. Their joyous, caring, loving Daveon, the heart of their family, was gone. The Chicago Police Department suddenly found themselves with a case that would test everything they knew about solving violent crimes in broad daylight. 3 teenagers had been shot in the middle of the afternoon, steps away from their high school, on a residential street where families lived and children played safely. This wasn't a late-night incident in a dark alley where there might be no witnesses. This was a brazen attack in full view of a community, captured on surveillance cameras with multiple witnesses, and everyone, the families, the school, the entire neighborhood, demanded answers immediately. But investigators had several things working in their favor, starting with Chicago's extensive surveillance camera network that covers much of the city. They immediately began the painstaking but crucial process of tracking that gray Honda Accord with Florida license plates through the streets of Chicago, following its path from camera to camera, building a timeline of exactly where it had been and when. The stolen Honda was found abandoned under the Red Line tracks in the 4100 block of North Kenmore Avenue, several miles away from the shooting scene. But rather than being the end of the evidence trail, this discovery was actually just the beginning of a case that would prove how modern investigative techniques could solve even the most challenging crimes. Video footage from multiple cameras showed the 2 suspects getting out of the abandoned car and doing something that would ultimately lead directly to their arrest. They changed clothes. The 2 shooters apparently thought they were being smart, believing that by changing their appearance and getting rid of the stolen vehicle, they could simply blend back into the city and disappear without a trace. But they made a crucial mistake that would prove to be their downfall. After changing clothes, the 2 suspects walked to Uplift High School, where they approached and spoke with several staff members. They probably thought they were creating an alibi, or maybe they just needed somewhere to go and thought a school would provide cover. But those staff members got a very good look at both suspects, and they remembered the encounter clearly. When investigators began canvassing the area around where the car was found, showing photographs and asking questions, those same staff members at Uplift High School were able to positively identify both suspects. They remembered seeing the 14-year-old and 17-year-old Kashawn Purdue at the school shortly after the time of the shooting. They remembered the conversation, they remembered what the teens were wearing after they changed clothes, and they were able to provide detailed descriptions that perfectly matched the surveillance footage from multiple camera angles. Armed with positive identifications and a mountain of video evidence, investigators obtained warrants for the homes of both suspects. What they found there provided the final pieces of evidence that would make this case what prosecutors would later call airtight. The exact clothing that both suspects had been wearing during the shooting, the clothes they had taken off and thought they had successfully hidden, were found in their respective homes. On February 21st, 2024, exactly 3 weeks after Daveon's death, 2 arrests were made that brought a measure of justice to a grieving family and community. The 14-year-old was charged as a juvenile with first-degree murder and attempted murder, though his name has not been released to the public because of his age. 17-year-old Kashawn Purdue was charged as an adult with the same serious crimes, first-degree murder and attempted murder. Both suspects now face the possibility of spending the rest of their lives in prison. The evidence against them is overwhelming and comprehensive. They have the stolen vehicle, surveillance footage of the actual attack, the clothing evidence found in their homes, positive witness identifications from school staff, and a complete timeline of everything that happened from the moment they stole the car until they were arrested. But for Daveon's family, for his grandmother Sherry Wesley, who loved him so much, for his little brothers who looked up to him, no amount of evidence, no number of arrests, no length of prison sentence can bring back the person they love most in the world. The justice system can hold people accountable for the choices they made, but it cannot undo the devastating damage they caused to a family and a community that will never ever be the same. What happened next would show the absolute best of humanity in the face of unthinkable tragedy, and it would demonstrate why Daveon Gibson's story has touched hearts all around the world. When news of his death spread through Edgewater and the surrounding Chicago neighborhoods, something beautiful and powerful began to happen that nobody could have predicted. People who had never met Daveon, families who didn't even know the Gibson family personally, neighbors and strangers and community members from across the city began coming together with one simple goal: to make sure that this young man was honored the way he deserved to be honored, and that his family wouldn't have to worry about the financial burden of saying goodbye. Led by Chad Curry, a community organizer and parent who understood the power of people coming together, local parents and teachers launched a GoFundMe campaign to help cover Daveon's funeral expenses. Their initial goal seemed reasonable, $15,000 to help a grieving family during the worst time of their lives. But what happened next showed just how deeply this story had touched people's hearts and how much this community valued the life of Daveon Gibson. The community didn't just meet that $15,000 goal, they completely shattered it, raising over $16,700 from hundreds of individual donations. That money came from teachers who barely knew the family, from parents whose own children attended different schools, from community members who simply believed that every young life has value and that every family deserves support when tragedy strikes. Chad Curry wrote these words that still give me chills every time I read them. He was one of our own. Daveon loved music and dancing and aspired to be a veterinarian. He was known for his kindness and respectful attitude with all. Those words perfectly captured not just who Daveon was, but why his loss affected so many people who had never even met him. On February 9th, 2024, I had the tremendous honor of filming what would become one of the most watched homegoing services in internet history. Using my iPhone, I captured hundreds and hundreds of people gathering at Miracle Revival Cathedral in Maywood to say goodbye to Daveon Gibson, and what I witnessed that day was more than just a funeral service. It was a community's powerful declaration that this young life mattered, that his dreams mattered, that his love for his family mattered, and that he would never, ever be forgotten. As I'm recording this today, 2,290,931 people have watched Daveon's homegoing service. Each one of those views represents someone who took time out of their day to honor a 16-year-old who just wanted to help his brother get ready for school pictures. Each view represents someone who looked at this tragedy and said, "This matters, this life mattered, this family's pain matters." If you want to see more complete investigations that honor these young lives, please subscribe to this channel. Daveon Gibson was 16 years old when he left Senn High School on January 31st, 2024. He never made it home to ask his little brother about picture day, but his story continues to touch millions of people who believe that every young life matters, that every family deserves justice, and that love will always be stronger than violence.